Red hot. Find out which Point Park soccer team is currently on a team-high 7-game winning streak.
Run, Forrest, run. We've got all the details on how the men's and women's cross-country teams fared this past weekend in Louisville.
Hockey is back. Here who our reporters have facing off in this year's Stanley Cup final. It's time to come on down to the Pioneer Sideline. Good evening and welcome to the Pioneer Sideline. I'm Sarah Maculin.
And I'm Mike Turk. Now tonight we'll start off the program discussing some volleyball. The team picked up their first home win of the season last Tuesday night against Washington and Jefferson College before hitting the road this past weekend. Now I got a chance to catch up with sophomore middle blocker Jaslyn Rozier, who had this to say after the match.
We pulled it together. We did like the little things kind of that made it work. We really played as a team. No one pouted, so that was nice.
7-6 overall now. Now, how does it feel to get that first win at home?
Feels great. All the fans here, everyone, my family. It just feels nice to win a game coming off a loss from IU East last week. Sometimes our team plays really weak-minded and we play very selfish. I think this weekend we have to come in all in. Basically, everyone plays selfless. We have to work as a team and really be focused and just work on like little techniques with things. I think sometimes we forget like there is little things that happen. It's not the big picture. It's not the scoreboard. It is a pass, a set, and a hit, but it's a perfect pass, a perfect set, and like executing the ball and getting it over the net, I think. So I think that's what we really need to do this weekend.
Now joining us to discuss how the Pioneers played this past weekend and what's next for the Point Park volleyball team, we want to welcome in Kiera Fry. Now, Kiera, the team was on the road this past weekend. A couple of big River States Conference matchups. They had to play Asbury University. Last year, Asbury knocked this Point Park team out of the River States Conference tournament, but they came back and won 3-0. So what was working for the Pioneers this time around against Asbury?
I think that it was definitely the offense. They came at it very aggressively, I think partially knowing that Asbury did knock them out of the tournament last year. So they were very aggressive the whole time. They had 38 kills, and once they got the momentum going, like it just kept going, and they were feeding off of each other really well, I thought.
Now in their last 3 matches, they've only lost 1 set. So how do they keep the foot on the gas pedal and keep this going?
I think that right now the offense and the defense are both really like clicking together, so I think that they need to keep that going because it's definitely helping them that the defense is keeping teams to such low kill percentages. So I think that they just need to continue working well together like they have been.
Now I have to ask, this is probably one of my favorite players to watch on that court this past couple seasons is Destiny Tucker. She had a leg injury earlier in the season, so she's been very limited in time. But she came back against Asbury, 10 kills, 2.5 blocks. How big is it that the Pioneers finally have one of their biggest offensive threats back in the middle?
Oh, it's huge for the team. You can see that in the streak that they've been having. And when she came back, her first game back, her and Ashley Taylor tied the team for the most kills, and she had the most blocks for the team, which was very impressive. And it was definitely a great first game for her to come back to.
Well, thanks, Kiera. Both cross-country teams traveled to Louisville this past weekend, where the women's team finished at number 7 and had 3 runners finish in the top 25.
Yeah, Sarah, unfortunately, though, it wasn't the same on the men's side as they finished 40th overall. To break it down even more for us, we bring in our cross-country expert, Nicholas Kosiski.
So, Nick, before we get into what happened this past weekend, let's look ahead a little bit. This coming Saturday, they're at Carnegie Mellon. So Shenley Park, it's like a home match for Point Park. What do you expect from the teams this coming weekend?
It's definitely going to be a really good race, especially since I know that they changed up the course a little bit too. So it's like everyone has a new fresh start. I expect to see like a lot of good times, especially because for Point Park, that's like where they train all the time. So they know like where the hills are and how tough they are too.
Now, when reading the recaps online and everything, Nick, now you had Alyssa Campbell, who was first in the silver race?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then you had Anna Shields racing in what was called the gold race. Could you possibly explain the difference between these two races? that go on?
You know, that's a great question. So basically, the gold race, it's like basically all D1 competition. So very competitive. And Anna Shields did amazing for placing top 10 in that. I think she placed 9th, which is amazing. And then it was still really good, though, for Alyssa to win the silver, too, because that was also a competitive race because it's at Louisville. Louisville is always competitive, you know, no matter what the race is. But, yeah, that's basically a little bit just D1, more D1 than the gold. But Anna Shields was still golden.
Now, Nick, we also had, aside from what Anna Shields did and what Alessa did, overall, the women's team did really, really well. They placed 7th overall. They had 3 top finishers in the top 25, correct? So, and then right now they're ranked 16. Can we expect a move up after what they did at Louisville, or what can you expect from them?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because even, like, I know Reba's a really good runner. Reba Bartram, she wasn't even there. She had class, but good that she's studying. But class is important. But yeah, they can definitely move up more, and they still have, you know, plenty of season. It's like kind of mid-season, but we're starting to get closer. We are, but they still have plenty of room to exceed, and I'm looking forward to that.
Nick, as always, we appreciate your time here on the Pioneer Sideline. Thank you for all that coverage. Now, when we come back, find out which Point Park team extended their winning streak to 7 games this past weekend.
And later, see who still remains undefeated in the NFL after 4 weeks of play. All that and more next.
Go.
Go to our new website, uview.pointpark.edu.
Go, 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 go.
Join UView and find your herd.
Join EOP. And 3, 2, Join EOP.
I just said grab them now, or else I will step on.
Yeah.
Join on point with politics.
3, 2, 1.
Join Pioneer Sideline.
Loneliest number that you'll ever do.
Welcome back. The Point Park women's soccer team is on fire and won their 7th game in a row on Saturday against WVU Tech.
Now, the women are undefeated in the River States Conference and will face another conference opponent in Ohio Christian this Thursday. To discuss the impressive success of the women's soccer team this season, we are joined by our very own soccer insider, Andrea Christian. Andrea, 7 in a row now. And in that 7-game winning streak, Pioneers have only allowed 2 goals. Just 2. That's really impressive so far. Now, what does that say about the defense in front of Ashton Webb back there in goal?
Our defense is the most strong. We have Chloe Bowers in the middle, and she's like our core of it all. And with her back there is amazing. Yeah, our defense is like very compact, and we connect with each other. That's the important thing, that we're connecting.
Now, we talked about before we came on air about the big matchup coming up against Carlo. They're both undefeated, both at the top. It's the city rival. What are your expectations for that game?
It's going to be a tough game. It's going to be very close. I believe in our team. I think we're going to pull out with this win as long as we just keep our heads up, don't get too over ourselves. But I think it's going to be a great game to come out and watch.
Now, I mentioned Tia Haru to you a couple weeks ago, the freshman who has been under the spotlight here early so far in the season. 6 games she has played in since coming back from an injury. She has 5 goals in those 6 games. Now, just how important has she been to this offense? Is this why the offense is doing so well here in the 7-game winning streak, that Tia Haru is back?
Tia's a key player for us up top. She's hitting those goals on net, which is fantastic. But a good option for us was we changed our formation in the middle. Instead of having 4 straight across, we now have a diamond. So we're more tight in the middle for we can get that ball up to Tia and whoever our striker is. So that's very key. And yes, Tia has been coming up with big goals, and she's a very key player for us.
Now, one last quick question. What are some predictions here against Ohio Christian University? What do you think is going to go on? This is a team that bounced the Pioneers in double overtime last season. What are the expectations this time around?
I have high expectations. This is a different team. We're a more attacking team this year than last year. We were a defensive team that we held back a little bit. So we're going to definitely put them on our toes, and it should be a great game.
Andrea, thank you very much for your time today on that Women's Soccer Report. Now, the Point Park men's soccer team isn't putting up the same numbers as the women, but have had to play some tough competition as of late.
Yeah, Mike, the men's team had to face two of the best teams in the entire NAIA this weekend, and they gave both teams a run for their money. To discuss the tough play of the men's soccer team this weekend, we bring in Taylor Spirito. So, Taylor, let's talk about this weekend. They played two top teams. We talked about Rio Grande and WVU Tech. So, Rio Grande finished a 1-0 game. WVU Tech, tie game. What are your takeaways from this weekend?
Honestly, you hear it all the time, and I've talked about this before with this men's soccer team's defense wins games. We talked before about the fact that whoever scores the first goal is going to go home the winner. Rio Grande scored the first goal in the first half. It wasn't necessarily an early goal, but it was still the first goal. So that put Point Park on the defense the entire rest of the game, still trying to get that last second goal. They couldn't capitalize on it. They almost got it. Christopher Chukanu had a one-timer, but it hit the crossbar. You know, as soon as they get into that defensive mindset, their offense kind of starts to slide down a little bit. So if they can get those early goals or keep that offensive mindset while still having that good defense that they had, they could easily come out with a win.
Now, a lot of tough competition there. River State's conference. Rio Grande's been on top at least my 4 years of being here. Number 7 in the country right now. West Virginia Tech receiving votes for the top 25. And yet they only lost 1-0 to Rio. They tie West Virginia Tech 1-1. What's their confidence and mindset at right now after playing some good soccer against good teams?
Well, like you said, Rio Grande is ranked number 7 in the nation right now. And WVU Tech remains unbeaten. Their record is 8-0-4. So the fact that they could keep up with these top teams really should give them a big confidence boost. They gave them some tough competition. Like I said, they put on their defense during this Rio Grande game, and it kept them to 1 goal in the first half. And the fact that they could do that was amazing. Rio Grande only had 3 shots in the second half. They had 18 the entire game, but only 3 after halftime. So the fact that they could keep up with those teams and really get them on their toes like that, that's incredible.
Now, coming into the long haul stretch, winding down, their last 6 games, 5 of those last 6 games are at home. So how much is this an advantage for the men's team, and do you expect them to take advantage of the opportunity?
Well, I would hope that they would take advantage of it, because home field advantage, if it's the same field as an away team, but it's still like the mentality of, this is my home turf, I want to defend my home turf, I want to go home with a win from my home turf. So the fact that the fans are going to come out, hopefully the families are going to come out, and the fact that they do have that familiar field advantage and that home field advantage, if they don't take advantage of that, then that's going to be super unfortunate, because home teams just have that advantage, and the fact that they might not, we're going to hope that they do it. That's just not it.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Taylor. When we come back, find out who secured home field advantage as the MLB wildcard race came down to the very last game of the regular season.
And later, who's going to take home the coveted Stanley Cup this year in the NHL? Our reporters will debate. Don't go anywhere.
What's one word to describe CAB?
Welcoming.
Community.
Creative.
Experiences.
Family.
Openness. Pineapple.
The Campus Activities Board is a student-run organization that consists of 7 different committees. Each focuses on event planning, marketing, and administrative activities. Join us in organizing the juiciest events on campus, from late-night bingo to festive dances to our team bonding meetings. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Point Park Cap, or like us on Facebook at Campus Activities Board at Point Park University.
Good evening and welcome to Newsnight. I'm Josh Troop alongside Jess Paterchak.
Defending his decision to kick out 15 Cuban diplomats from the United States.
Thanks, Allison. Fitness on Demand has returned to Point Park.
Residents fear that Mount Agung will have a repeat of 1963's eruption.
2-star NFL quarterbacks made the headlines this week after wrapping up.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That's your news tonight. For Nick Tomarello, I'm Alex Grubbs. Have a great night.
Welcome back. The Pittsburgh Pirates season is officially over, and despite missing the playoffs, the team finished with a winning record.
And while the Pirates have closed the door on another season, the Penguins are just getting started with the regular season this week. Colton Tobias has more on what's going on in Pittsburgh sports. Colton?
Well, Mike and Sarah, the Steelers' rocky start to the season continued Sunday night as they lost their second game of the year to their arch rival, the Baltimore Ravens, 26-14. They are now tied with Cleveland for last place in the AFC North. The Steelers started off slow as the Ravens took a 14-0 lead early. However, the Steelers did fight back to tie it right before halftime. But, as we have seen all season, the Steelers didn't have an answer for the Ravens in the second half as the Steelers' offense was forced to punt 4 times, along with their defense giving up 4 field goals to Ravens kicker Justin Tucker. The Steelers will fall to 1-2-1 as they will face the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday at Heinz Field. Well, baseball season is officially over this year in Pittsburgh, and the Pirates finished out the season in Cincinnati over the weekend. This season does come with a surprise, however, as they finished with a record of 82-79. It is their first winning season since 2015. And Penguin fans are finally going to get to rejoice this week as they will begin regular season play on Thursday against the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Washington Capitals, who also eliminated the Penguins last year in the second round of the playoffs. The puck will drop at PBG Paints Arena at 7 o'clock. Also, in other news, the Pittsburgh Riverhounds clinched a spot in the 2018 United Soccer League playoffs last week with a win against Penn FC. They will host first place FC Cincinnati this Saturday at Highmark Stadium with only 3 matches left until the playoffs begin.
Well, thank you so much for that report there, Colton. Now, going over to national news, we got a big name in the UFC is coming back, and Conor McGregor, one of the most eccentric and exciting guys to watch, but I'm done telling you that. We're going to throw it over now to Aaron Becker, who has the national report. Aaron.
Exactly, guys. Khabib Nurmagomedov will take on Conor McGregor at UFC 229 on Saturday in Las Vegas. UFC held a news conference earlier this month where McGregor made some comments on Nurmagomedov and his family, even calling his father a coward. Nurmagomedov said he won't allow McGregor's trash talk to affect him, but that he is, quote, a little bit angry, end quote. The UFC has a final news conference scheduled on Thursday in Las Vegas for both fighters. Nurmagomedov said McGregor wants to make him nervous, but that he can control his emotions and looks to tire McGregor out. So it should be a great fight on Saturday night between the quiet and the outspoken. And it was another very eventful week in the NFL. John Gruden won his first game as a head coach in over 10 years, 3,591 days to be exact. And kicker Adam Vinatieri broke the NFL record for most field goals ever made, now with 567, and he only needs 31 more points to break the career scoring record, which is now held by former kicker Mort Anderson with 2,544 points. As well, safety Earl Thomas broke his leg in the Seahawks win over the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday. Thomas held out earlier this season, hoping to get a new contract, but now he will miss the rest of the season. Steelers running back Le'Veon Bell, who was holding out for the same reasons, made an Instagram post saying, quote, "I'll continue to be the bad guy for all of us," end quote, making it look like his holdout will continue. The Steelers have started to actively shop Bell, looking for at least a second-round pick and a good player. However, there has been a recent report that Bell will return in Week 7 during the team's bye, just in time for Pittsburgh's rematch against the Cleveland Browns, who they tied in Week 1. And after 2 straight losses for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it seems like there's no more Fitzmagic left in the air. Jameis Winston has been named the starter for their Week 6 matchup against the Atlanta Falcons as they look to turn things back around with the help of their Week 5 bye.
Well, thanks, Aaron. Coming up next, the preseason is finally over, and the NHL regular season will kick off tomorrow night.
Who do our reporters think is going to finish on top? We'll have their predictions next.
The United Student Government at Point Park University, working since the 1970s to solve the issues that matter to you. What concerns do you have about the university? Student life, safety, food service? Send us an email to studentconcerns@pointpark.edu or stop by our office on the 7th floor of the Student Center. You can also attend our weekly open meetings on Mondays at 3:15. Follow us on social media at USG_PPU for more. The United Student Government, by the students, for the students.
The Point Park Sports Network, bringing you live coverage of Pioneer Athletics on Stretch Internet, the home of the River States Conference and the NAIA. Subscribe today for complete access to the Point Park volleyball, baseball, basketball, and soccer teams. Watch live and on-demand broadcasts and don't miss a minute of Point Park Athletics. Head to pointparksports.com/live for broadcast listings. The Point Park Sports Network, your streaming home for Point Park Athletics.
3, 2, 1.
Please visit our website. Please, it's a nice website. Please visit our website. Please.
If you have ever watched television, whether accidentally or on purpose, UView is for you.
Welcome back. The NHL preseason has officially wrapped up, and that means it's time for the start of the regular season.
The NHL regular season will open up tomorrow night at 7 p.m. when the Montreal Canadiens take on the Toronto Maple Leafs in Toronto.
But who will finish on top this season? To debate and make our predictions, we have joining us Taylor Spirito and 3 reporters making their Pioneer Sideline debuts, and Ray, RJ, and Megan. So, guys, let's first start off with your top picks in each conference. We'll go Eastern Conference first. Taylor, who you got?
For the Eastern Conference, I have the Toronto Maple Leafs.
You want to give some reasoning behind
sure.
that?
Aren't you a big fan of them as well?
I am a big fan.
I was going to say, yeah.
But I'm just going to start out with they had the biggest off-season move this season, signing John Tavares. He's going to be a huge factor in them having a successful season, along with Austin Matthews and Nazem Kadri being their other top 3 centers. They're going to have a great time. Their power play unit is looking great with Tavares, Matthews, Marner. They're just going to have a great season offensively, and if they get their defense in check, I could see them going all the way.
Ray, what do you think?
I'm not hopping on the Toronto bandwagon. I am instead hopping on the Detroit bandwagon. Kind of a shock to a lot of pundits, but they lost Henrik Zetterberg this offseason. He had to retire due to a back injury, and I think a lot of people are grossly underrating this team because they do have a lot of talented young forwards. They do have a solid defense, and Jimmy Howard has always been a solid goaltending choice for this Red Wing team.
Megan?
I'm actually going to hop on the Toronto bandwagon as well. I'm also a huge fan, but Tavares, that move, it was absolutely huge. Our power play is ridiculous. Austin Matthews looks great, so I see Toronto doing really well.
And RJ, wrap us up.
None of those are really bad choices. They all have great choices, but I got to go with Tampa Bay. You can't forget about what they did last year, and with that break, I see them just coming out firing on all cylinders too. They just beat Toronto for me by 1 point.
All right, so we got Tampa Bay, 2 Torontos, and a Detroit. Now let's jump over to the other conference, the Western Conference. RJ, we'll go back to you since you went last time. Who you got over on the Western side this time?
Well, it's rather easy to call San Jose going out and getting Erik Karlsson from Ottawa, but I got to go with the Winnipeg Jets. I just love how they got a really well-rounded team. Their defense is solid. They got a good goaltender, and who needs to be introduced to that offense of theirs? Can't go past them.
I actually have San Jose over Winnipeg, so opposite. But I think Erik Karlsson, adding him he was just a key piece to add, and they have some great other players like Brett Burns. So, yeah, I see San Jose.
Right.
It's very difficult for me not to pick the San Jose Sharks with the acquisitions they've made this offseason, but I'm going to select Vegas. They did not lose too much, only losing James Neal and David Perron, but they did gain Paul Stastny and, in one of the biggest surprises to me, Max Pacioretty, the Canadiens captain. I think and of course Nick Holden, their free agent acquisition signing. I think this team will definitely contend with the Sharks, but Sharks versus Knights, that's going to be the race for the top of the West.
I actually also have San Jose. The Erik Karlsson trade is just, while Toronto had the biggest offseason move, San Jose definitely had the biggest preseason move. Getting Erik Karlsson is really going to up their defense, even more than it already was with Brett Burns, and upping that offense or defense. I was gonna say power play. Upping that power play with Brett Burns, Joe Pavelski, and Joe Thornton. That's going to be a powerhouse. And like we've said countless times, or at least I've said on this show, defense truly does win games.
So now we've talked about, we have your picks and everyone, and Ray mentioned them jumping on the Toronto bandwagon. Let's go through, and no one mentioned the Penguins, the hometown team.
Or the defending champions.
Exactly. So who do you think is overrated this season in terms of how they're going to do, or anyone surprising that you think may sneak into the Stanley Cup playoffs?
Personally, not just this season, but I think Chicago is pretty overrated. Sure, they have Patrick Kane, sure they have Jonathan Toews, but you saw last season they crumbled and they fell, and even when they went 0-4 against Nashville. Like, they had their prime, they could get back into it, but as of right now, I don't see that happening, especially after the last 2 seasons.
Right?
Another team that's going to be a shock that I think is overrated is Pittsburgh. Matt Murray's .905 save percentage last year for a starter is terrible. They also lost depth players like Tom Kuhnhackl and Carter Rowney in the offseason, and they only picked up Matt Cullen, and then they attempted to bullshit with Jimmy Hayes before they cut him from the roster. So I have very little confidence in Matt Murray, especially after last season performing so terribly.
I think the defending Stanley Cup champions are not going to do as well as they did last year. I think a lot of people are going into this thinking that they're going to do well just because they won the Stanley Cup, but I don't see them doing it twice in a row.
RJ?
Yeah, you saw how shocked everyone was when Pittsburgh won back-to-back cups. It's almost impossible to do in the salary cap era. But I'd keep my eye on Florida. I honestly think they're pretty underrated. They seem a lot like Winnipeg to me. They got a well-rounded team. The goaltending might be able to use a little bit of an upgrade, but all around, I think they're a really solid team. Yes. Watch out for them.
Pretty decent picks from you guys. I don't go against your Pittsburgh pick at all, actually, because I'm kind of on the same boat with you, but that's another conversation for another day. Let's jump over. Stanley Cup Championship. Who do you guys have? Nobody picking the defending champions. I'm kind of surprised in that, but who do you guys got this season?
So I had San Jose versus Toronto. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to, is Toronto's offense better than San Jose's defense, or is San Jose's defense better than Toronto's offense? At the end of the day, I can honestly say San Jose in 7. Final answer.
Ray, what's your take?
Again, it's very hard to go between the Knights or the Sharks, so since the Sharks have already picked, I'll take the Knights from the West. And out of the East, thanks to some input from RJ, I'm actually going to take Florida, because with Tampa losing Steve Yzerman, I'm kind of indifferent on them, but Florida has the active goaltending wins leader in Roberto Luongo and a pretty solid backup in James Reimer to go with him. And with the way this season, or this offseason's gone, I have no idea who to pick for the winner.
I'm also going to go with Toronto and San Jose. I feel like Toronto's offense is amazing, but our defense kind of lacks, so therefore I have San Jose winning.
I had to go with my top contender in the West, Winnipeg, to make it out there. And actually Toronto's biggest rival in Boston going to the Cup final. And I got to give it to Winnipeg in 6.
Well, some different answers. That's what I like to see on the Case of the Week. No one agreeing. But that's all that we have time for this week. Be sure to join us next week at the same Pioneer time.
The same Pioneer channel.
And the same Pioneer Sideline.